Welcome to the first episode of 2022. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That rhymed. Did you enjoy that? It was kind of a very simple rhyme. It sort of rhymed with itself. It was welcome to 2022. It was 2 and 2. Does that count as a rhyme? I think it does because they're different words. The first one is T-O, and the second one is T-W-O, so they're two different words. And they sound exactly the same, but I guess they rhyme with each other, right? What are those called? Homophones? Taking it back to grade school. Stuff you learned in English class. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about anyway. What a wonderful day. It's raining. Hopefully it melts all the snow away that's on the ground, which I'm really sick of at this point. I hope you guys are excited about that too, even if you don't live here and you're not dealing with this weather right now. You know, you could live vicariously through this snow melting joy of mine. And I'm sure others. Some of the roads around here have just been like sheets of ice because they don't plow them properly. Like yesterday I went on a side street and it was just totally ice. I had to drive like 2 miles an hour down the road. Pretty wacky that they don't plow things around here properly. Even like really steep hills are just covered in ice. Just completely insane. I think people a lot of times, when it comes to Seattle, they make fun of the way that people drive in the snow around here. But there's a reason for it. It's because the roads don't get plowed properly and salted. And there's a lot of hills too. So, I mean, that would happen to pretty much any driver. On the East Coast, there's more snow, but they also deal with it more properly. They plow it like instantly and they salt all the roads. And also, the East Coast is a lot flatter. So, I don't think the drivers are any better over there. In fact, they might even be worse because, in my experience, they're way more dangerous to drivers. Like, they don't really heed pedestrians or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, that's why people in Seattle drive like that in the snow. It's not because they're bad drivers. I mean, there are bad drivers around here, but that doesn't explain the way people drive in Seattle and why there's a bunch of sliding on the streets and stuff. I saw this TikTok video where this girl posted a clip of Seattle drivers sliding, and she was like, this is what happens to Seattle people after they get like 3 inches of snow or something. And it's like, yeah, I think you're kind of simplifying the problem there. She's basically saying Seattle drivers can't handle the snow, but that's not the reason. You know the concept of manspreading? Where a guy is like sitting with his legs really spread out so that no one can like sit next to him. And he doesn't really even notice what he's doing because he's just, I don't know, such a self-centered man. And he's just full of himself. He doesn't even realize what he's doing. That happens a lot, you know, like in places like in New York on the subway. You'll see people manspreading. So they're taking up like 3 seats because their legs are so far spread apart you can't sit next to them. What about ladyspreading? Does that ever happen? Doesn't seem to really happen because I guess women don't really sit like that usually. Maybe if they're wearing pants they sit like that. But even then they don't really sit with their legs spread out as much as guys do. I think a lot of guys do it because they're like, oh, I can't do that because I'll crush my balls if I sit like that. I mean, you must be kind of anatomically strange if you're going to literally crush your balls completely just from closing your legs a little bit more, right? Maybe it happens mostly with older middle-aged guys when their balls get really saggy. I guess I'm at that point, and I don't know, if I close my legs too much, it'll hurt, but I mean, some of the guys, they manspread like, so they're almost doing the splits, basically. And it's like, I don't think your balls are that big, dude. And you're wearing pants too, so that means your balls are at least fitting in your pants. If they wouldn't even be able to fit in your pants if you had to have your legs that wide to not crush them, right? So there's something kind of odd there. I think it's more of a space thing. Like these guys, they like having a lot of space around them. They're just hogging it. Which is not really appropriate in a really dense city like New York, where you have lots of people. It's not really appropriate at all to sit like that. You kind of have to... I think it's part of the social contract out there in New York that you're giving up some of your personal space. That's just the way it is because it's crowded. And it's pretty much like that in any crowded city, you know, like in Tokyo or Seoul or anywhere in Europe where it's really crowded. And public transportation, people are just close to each other, and you got to get used to it. That's just the way it is. If you're hogging up a bunch of space, kind of a moron. I think it happens more in America, where people are more individualist and just looking out for themselves. You also see a lot more litter on the street, like in New York, than you would in a city in like Tokyo or Seoul, because the Western individualism thing, you know, where everyone's just looking out for themselves. I don't think you see as much manspreading either, like on the subway in Tokyo. It can happen sometimes. I know they have reserved seats out there for like elderly people, and you're supposed to get up, right, if you're in that seat and you see an older person get on the train. Some people don't do it though. Like some young guys will just sit there even though there's an elderly person who just got on the train. And sometimes people will get annoyed at them and be like, you need to stand up because that elderly person wants to sit there. And the guy will, it's usually a guy, I don't know, he might put up some resistance or act like a bitch about it. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, you know what I'm saying? Wow, I can't believe it's 2022 already. 2021 went by fairly quickly, considering all the crap we had to put up with. I was unemployed most of the year. I didn't get a job until the end of October, I think. And I got laid off the beginning of the pandemic, so I was unemployed for like a year and a half. I mean, I had some freelance gigs here and there, but it's kind of weird being unemployed that long. I really get lazy if I don't have some sort of a routine, and I start waking up later and later, and I start, I don't know, just procrastinating more for some reason. It's weird, you have more time, but somehow you use it less efficiently. At least that's what happens to me. I think that's why a lot of older people don't retire. My dad was saying the same thing. He wants to keep working even though he's like in his mid-70s now. Because when you retire, you just kind of shut down, it seems like, eventually. And I think people who retire really early die younger. Unless they keep themselves busy somehow. You gotta keep your mind and your body moving, or else you just kind of rot away, I think. So that's something to think about. Like Kumiko, she works with someone who's in her 90s, and I guess she doesn't plan on retiring. I think it's good to get out and talk to people and move around, get the blood flowing. I think that's healthy. You know how they say in the workplace you should communicate really clearly and just directly? At least that's how they do it in the Western world, right? Like, you don't want to beat around the bush. There's no time for that in the corporate world. You gotta get to the point. And I think that they should do that, like, with other things too, like when you're telling your coworkers you need to go to the bathroom. I think it's better to cut to the chase and say, I need to go pee. Like, you should tell your boss, you know, you don't say, hey, I need to use the men's room. You say, I need to go urinate, or I need to go take a dump. Maybe you wouldn't say dump to your boss. Maybe you would say, I need to defecate. Then they understand more clearly, like, what exactly you're going to be doing and how much time it might take. Because if you're doing a number 2, it might take a little bit longer than if you're doing a number 1, right? So they'll know to expect you back a little bit later. Like, if you just say, I'm going to the bathroom, they might assume you're going to go pee, right? And that you're going to be back in like a few minutes. But then if you don't come back for like 10, 15 minutes, they'll be like, why is it taking so long for him to pee? What is he doing in there? I mean, I guess they might guess or deduce after some time that, oh, he must be pooping in there. That's why he's taking so long. But you don't want to make them guess like that. You don't want to make them anticipate and have to wait around and try to like figure out what's going on. Like, why isn't he back from the bathroom yet? Like, did something happen in there? Maybe we need to go check on him. But if you say clearly and directly, I'm going to go in there and defecate, then they'll say, oh, okay, so they'll do some calculations in their mind, like, then I'll expect you back in like 10 minutes, possibly 15 minutes at the longest. You don't really want to sit on the pot too long at work. That's eating into time off the clock, and productivity is important, for the company's bottom line. You want to eat into that by being a guy who sits on the pot for like 30 minutes to an hour, playing with his smartphone or something. So with that in mind, if you tell your coworkers what's going on exactly, then things will go more smoothly at work. And that's pretty much the goal at work, right? You want things to go smoothly and efficiently, and you got to increase production. That's pretty much the whole point in this capitalist system we all live in, where we got to work, where work kind of defines who we are, basically. I mean, that's not the way I want it to be, but that's just the way it is. That's the system that we exist in. We're kind of like, I don't know. It's like a form of like neo-feudalism, basically. Where all the really rich people are sort of the lords of a certain area, and their employees are like their serfs or their vassals, That's kind of what we have now. I think that's basically what capitalism becomes, after like a few decades. Isn't that what they talk about in the Communist Manifesto? You just get a really rich class, and then you get like a middle class, and then you get a lower class. I think eventually, though, the middle class vanishes, so everyone is just lower class at some point. And then there's just a few really, really rich people. I think that's what they call late stage capitalism. And I think that's close to where we're at. Maybe. I don't know. I don't really know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm just kind of just talking out of my ass right now. It's kind of a strange expression too, right? Talking out of your ass. I mean, you could like fart, and maybe it could kind of resemble speech sometimes, depending on the sounds that are emitted from your butthole. But usually farts don't sound like talking, so wonder what they mean by that. It's like, are they saying that like your vocal cords are in your rectum or something, or that it's just a figure of speech, right? Like you're saying such nonsensical stuff that it's kind of like, it's kind of like you're talking out of your ass, right? Like it's just like poop talk or fart talk. It's not really meaningful speech. I guess that's what they mean by that, right? It's not a literal expression, like you're literally talking out of your ass. It's kind of nice thinking through that with you guys. Glad you came along for the ride. I hope you guys come along with me for the ride this year as well. Keep riding on this truck or train or whatever you want to call it. And let's just keep bussing it, or, RVing it, or, Coupe de Villing it down the highway. Because we gotta keep driving. Keep going. Keep putting one foot in front of the other. Sometimes you gotta stop and like do other stuff though, and then resume putting one foot in front of the other. Like you gotta eat, or use the restroom, or have some recreational time. That kind of thing. Anyway, Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye.